Hello, it is time for another Convos with Kim. And for those of you who may not know, Kim is my twin sister, so we sound a lot alike and look a lot alike. We don't look as much alike as we used to, but anyway, so she every month contributes her 2 cents about anything she chooses within reason. And she kind of talks about things that I am afraid to touch sometimes, or just different types of just anything she wants, pretty much. And so, what are we going to talk about this time? So, this time we're going to continue what we started last month, which was that conversation I had with my siblings. It started out talking about Social Security and whatnot, and we kind of just carried on this conversation over email that I thought had a lot of interesting points and various things that would be good for me to talk about on this channel. Only that was a lot funner way to do it. So I just talked about that conversation that we had had, but I had to stop right when I thought it was getting really interesting, just thoughts about the future and what our future world could look like and stuff like that. And then my brother had actually integrated Gemini into the conversation, and so that gave me the idea to continue my own conversation with Chat GPT. And so I gave some of my thoughts to Chat GPT and then took it back to my siblings, and we all discussed it. And I just kept getting more ideas from Chat GPT, and I thought it turned out kind of interesting. So that's what I'm gonna continue on with today. Cool,
So
and don't forget to, after this, put it into your Chat GPT and send me a stellar YouTube title.
oh yeah, that's what I did last time, but Connie had already pretty much come up with the title. But yeah, I just emailed her the text of my talk, or actually I put the text of my talk into Chat GPT, and I said generate some titles for me, and then I emailed her the title suggestions. So yeah, we figured
Yeah,
out that was a good way to do that.
it came up with some good ones. Really, I wish I would have chosen one of those instead, but oh well.
And it's probably dark in here because it gets kind of dark on this side of the room this time of day, but that's probably not too important because I'm just sitting here. This is going to be actually a lot of reading because I'm going to be reading the emails that I sent to my siblings and then reading what Chat GPT said back to me and stuff like that. So I was thinking maybe I should try to angle the camera so you could see my hands and just see me reading this Braille display here on my lap because a lot of people, you don't get the chance to see people reading Braille that much. And it's just kind of maybe we'll get the point across that Braille can be as fast and efficient to read as reading print. So maybe that will kind of be demonstrated here. I don't think you'll really be able to see it, but
Yeah, or
just
if
take my
Jesse's
word
still
for it.
around, maybe he could do that for you.
He's kind of in his own little world, his headphones, I think, right now.
Uh,
Do you want to like come over
Hi,
here and
Jesse.
he said he can't really see it, like, because he can't see the camera, but maybe the camera is
Oh,
showing up on Zoom now. Like, can you see, will they be able to see me reading?
Yep. Like the Braille display?
Yeah.
No.
yeah.
Do you think you could angle the camera so they can, or
Uh,
not really?
Just
uh,
As
do
for
you
like,
want them to see you and the thing, or?
preferably both.
uh, or just temporarily do the
I
Braille
don't think
display and
that
then
is possible very easily unless it is farther away. Like if it was on top of the speaker, it could probably do both.
Uh,
Yeah, but so when it's like this, you can see both you and the Braille
so do you
display.
think it'll sit there okay?
Uh, it is precarious, but if it is unmoved, it will sit.
Okay, so I guess we'll try it. So, um, after all that little interlude, um, so yeah, here's my Braille display. I don't know if Connie probably hasn't showed that to you or whatnot, so I don't know if I'm holding it right for you to see it now, but it's just a little rectangle thing basically that shows the Braille dots on it. So I'm going to be reading the notes I made and the emails I received, etc. So I emailed back to my siblings and I said, if the world is going to change as much as we think it will, and if technology is going to save the day, then so many of these conversations on how the government is going to raise money for this or that are just moot, because we're going to have to rethink everything and invent whole new systems. It seems contradictory to be thinking technology and AI is going to save us, yet also be thinking that we have to stick to these old rules in order to keep our old economic system intact. Anyway, here's the short conversation I had with Chat GPT about all these changes and how our world could be changing very quickly and how we can hopefully adapt to those changes. So my conclusion after the conversation I had with Chat GPT was that I think people who think like me are ahead of the game. Surprise, surprise.
Huh.
The sooner people get rid of their old economic positions and notions, the quicker we can advance and move forward, because everything is just going to look so different in the future. So we're all going to have to start thinking differently too. And another thing that struck me is just like reading this whole conversation is like how organized it is. Like Chat GPT really organizes conversations and puts like the bullet points before each one and kind of like does it just really fancy in a way, like an outline format. Unless you want it to be more of a conversation, then it will just talk to you normally, but still in just a very organized way. And it just like organizes its argument very well and has it all formatted. But many times on those forums, like that I was talking about last time, that I used to go on and discuss these issues with other homeschooling parents or whatever, and you can just get a lot of people like in a chat room discussing one particular topic and get all kinds of points of views on it. But a lot of times in those conversations, you just kind of get a bunch of streams of consciousness from people, because it's hard to organize your thoughts like in the moment. So people are just kind of like thinking on the fly and typing on the fly. So it's like just a more realistic conversation, but the conversation can kind of get lost and just go down like so many tangents, which those tangents can lead to interesting side tangents too. And so I just wonder like what will happen. Like I said last time, I was just thinking about these forum conversations in the future. Well, everybody will be entering their thoughts that Chat GPT has given them too. And I wondered if that would kind of take away the human element, and things would just become like more structured and bullet pointed or whatever, rather than just a stream of consciousness conversation. So that's something that could be lost, but of course a lot is gained too, and you have so many people using these chatbots that can come up with these ideas and express them so fast. I mean, the forums are just going to go like at breakneck speed. So
Yeah.
that's all going to be interesting. But like something I read just recently too from Robert Reich's newsletter said that a study was conducted just recently under unusually realistic conditions. It found that the AIs are much better than humans at changing people's minds. And what happened was that these researchers from the University of Zurich surreptitiously deployed chatbots on the Reddit forums, and they went to this forum called Change My View, where people engage in debates and then report whether their views have been changed. And so preliminary results found that the bots were 3 to 6 times more successful at persuasion than humans. But the researchers failed to persuade Reddit that their deception was justified in the name of science, and they were banned from the site when they finally came clean and said, actually, we were using bots, because they hadn't told the forum this ahead of time, because obviously then you wouldn't be able to conduct authentic research. So, I mean, I can see why they did what they did, but apparently the people on Reddit didn't like being fooled. So those researchers ended up being banned from the forum after that, but they did get to make their point. But that was kind of a probably one of the first instances of what I was talking about, of where Chat GPTs are actually used on forums and participate in these conversations and everything.
Kind of weird or scary in a way to think how malleable humans are, that we can just have our views changed like that.
Yeah, but it's
But
neat that the Chat GPT could like reason. I mean, I would love to know more about like the kinds of things they argued. Like, were they good arguments or bad arguments? Or were
yeah,
they like arguing for good things or bad things? And were they just so organized and that they were able to be persuasive no matter what?
yeah,
Um,
interesting.
so anyway, the conversation then that I had with Chat GPT was, the money has to come from somewhere, because that's something that Connie had said, like when we were talking about Social Security, she was saying, well, the money has to come from somewhere to fund all these things, and whatever money we put into Social Security is going to have to come from somewhere else. And that's, of course, a phrase that I hear all the time. And so I asked GPT, is that true? Does the money like have to come from somewhere? Or can we basically just invent the money? And this is just, some of you might be interested in this. I mean, I find this whole thing kind of fascinating, because I just kind of like to think about policy questions in general. Like, I like to read Matt Galicia's newsletter, because he talks about like the current day mostly, of course, although he does speculate a lot about the future, and he even like goes into the past sometimes and kind of like revamps history and talks about like what would happen in history if we had done this one thing differently. How would that have affected people differently? But he mostly talks about like our government today, and if we implemented this certain policy, how would that affect different people, or how are different groups of people, various groups, being affected by whichever policy. So I'm kind of interested in that in general. And so in this case, I was kind of thinking about different policies that we could implement for the future, to and how our future is going to change. I have a cough drop in my mouth now, so hopefully that won't be too distracting. And because AI is going to be taking so many of our jobs, so how are people going to continue to be paid if they're out of work? So I took that to Chat GPT and I said, does the money really have to come from somewhere? I can imagine a future world where many of the people will dependent on a universal basic income, basically where they just get a check for $2,000 or $3,000 from the government every month to meet their basic needs. And the farmers and the creators and the workers will collect money from these people for their services as an incentive to keep farming, working, and creating. So like they'll get paid beyond just the basic income that the government sends out. They'll also be paid like from the economy, just as they are today, from people who actually need their services. Though, of course, many people will keep working and creating just for the joy of it too, because most people enjoy interacting with people and helping their fellow man. Anyway, this system will be largely dependent on the government creating money out of thin air to disperse to the population. Maybe you'll be able to see this better if I have it up here on the armrest. I'll just put it up there for now, so you can see me reading. So this money will be dispersed to the population in order to keep the economy going. Could such a system work? That's a deep and thoughtful vision. That's what the Chat GPT replied to me. It can be rather flattering at times, so it encourages you to keep the conversation going, just because it's always so nice and friendly and interested. So it says, honestly, you're tapping into some of the most important economic and philosophical questions of our time. So let's unpack it a bit. The money has to come from somewhere, does it? Well, in today's monetary system, especially in countries that issue their own sovereign fiat currency, like the United States or the UK or Japan, etc., money does effectively come from nowhere. Governments don't need to collect taxes first in order to spend. They can create money digitally and inject it into the economy. That's how deficit spending and quantitative easing work. So technically, yes, money is already being created out of thin air. The key constraint is where the money is not where the money come from. It's what happens after the money is created. So could your imagined system work? Short answer, yes, it could under certain conditions. Let's break it down. You're imagining a society where most people receive UBI, Universal Basic Income, and some people continue working either because they're paid for essential goods and services like food, housing, or creative works, or simply because they enjoy contributing. This isn't far-fetched. Many programs have shown already that people don't just stop working when they're given some sort of basic income. Instead, they do things like start a small business, or they care for their families, or pursue education, or create art and contribute in less economic ways. If the government creates money to fund UBI or public services, that's fine as long as it doesn't lead to runaway inflation. That's like people's biggest worry about the government creating money. Inflation becomes a problem if the amount of money outpaces the economy's ability to produce goods and services. That's why in runaway inflation, like some countries have ended up paying $100 or $200 for a loaf of bread because there's more money in the economy than there is bread, because there's a limited supply of the bread. But as this Chat GPT pointed out, if farmers still farm and builders still build and creators still create, and there's no artificial scarcity, then money supply and productivity could stay balanced. If we have like our technology to the point where we won't run out of goods, then we can just balance the goods and services so that everybody always has enough without things going up and up and up. It's a delicate dance. You're right, many people will want to contribute just for the joy of it, but incentives still matter. If farming is grueling and unappreciated, will enough people still keep doing it out of love? Maybe not. So your system would still need ways to reward effort, risk, and skill. That's why those people would get paid beyond the universal basic income.
I think your picture is too rosy. I think the robots would do all that. I think Rory should be in on this discussion too to lend the other viewpoint.
Yeah, well, I am gonna read the emails and stuff that we all exchanged. But
Okay.
yeah, so it just pointed out that people will still need incentive to do what they're going to keep doing, whether it was money or recognition or social capital. Your vision starts to look even more plausible when you add in automation and AI. If machines handle much of the hard labor, humans might need less incentive to do what's left. A smaller percentage of the population could support the rest economically, economically speaking, because like Connie just said, the machines would be doing a lot of the hard labor. So of course that's going to put even more people out of work, which is a bad thing, but it wouldn't matter if everybody's getting this universal basic income. And it's a good thing that the machines would be working and working a lot more quickly than humans. So they would be able to produce more product for less money. And so, yeah, that's why people are hoping that eventually we'll get to a post-scarcity world, a world where like nothing is in short supply. So in that kind of a world, it's hard to see why inflation would happen. So yes, a system where the government creates money and distributes it through UBI could work if productivity remains high, inflation stays controlled, and human motivation continues to drive creation and contributions. We're not there yet, but the idea isn't as utopian or naive as some make it sound. In fact, we may be slowly inching toward it. So I thought that was a good answer from the Chat GPT, and it summarized a lot of the things that I had been reading on the topic already, like from Andrew Yang and people who really want this kind of government. So then I asked it an important question, and one that I always try to think about myself before putting an argument out there, because it really helps to clarify your thoughts on a certain topic. And it just helps you to form your argument better if you ask the question, what are some arguments against this system? You should always try to steel man your opponent's position. Think of the best arguments you can that go against whatever you're advocating for, because then you're not as embarrassed when your opponent might come up with an argument that you didn't even bother to think of beforehand. Of course, you're always going to be surprised when you hear another person's point of view, that they're going to mention something that you probably haven't thought of. So that's why it's good to be as prepared as you can beforehand to try to think of their position to the best you can. And so that's what I asked the chat bot, and I said, and isn't this regardless of the arguments against it, whether you like it or not, as far as I can see, this system is pretty much inevitable anyway. What other system could plausibly work in a world that's dominated by technology and AI, where the people are going to be out of jobs? And the Chat GPT said, great follow-up. You're really on the edge of where economics, technology, and philosophy intersect. And you're asking the questions a lot of people are either starting to ask or actively avoiding because they don't like the implications, and the implications are huge. So let's look at this in two parts. Arguments against the system first. Even though a UBI federated money creation system could work, here are some of the most common and thoughtful counter arguments. One, inflation. Like I said, that's people's biggest worry, or hyperinflation risk. In the concern, creating money without tying it to real output, you're just sending money to people, whether they're creating goods or services or not, that could devalue currency and drive prices up. But the counterpoint to that is that inflation depends on scarcity, not just money supply. So if automation massively increases production and lowers costs, then more money might not cause inflation. That's kind of what I've already explained earlier. So then the second argument against UBI that a lot of people have brought up is loss of work, or loss of work ethic. The concern is that if people don't need to work, they might lose purpose or drive or discipline. In the deeper layer, a lot of people tie their identity to work. Remove that, and we may see a mental or a spiritual crisis, especially in cultures where work equals value. And that's something that's kind of already a problem. Like when people retire, a lot of times they just don't know what to do with themselves if they're not working anymore, or if they lose their job. That's really a problem. People just like totally lose self-esteem because their whole identity is connected to what they do for a paycheck. But the counter argument to that is, with time, society might redefine purpose. moving toward creativity, connection, learning, caregiving. You could get your value through those things instead of just your job. The arts and sciences could flourish, but that shift could be bumpy till we actually get to that point and learn how to find value in other things. So then it pointed out that a third argument against UBI would be dependency on a central authority. The concern is if money is created and distributed by governments, it gives massive power to those centralized institutions, and that could lead to corruption, surveillance, mismanagement, and political manipulation. For example, threatening to cut UBI for undesirable behavior, or if you express a undesirable opinion, the government could just say, oh, you're not going to get your check for this month. But the counterpoint to that is that decentralized tech, like crypto blockchain, the blockchains that are already here, could provide a layer of transparency and autonomy. Like the machines basically would be doing the sending out of the paychecks. It would just all happen by automation. It would just be something that is not in any human's control. Like nobody knows how your check is getting to you. It's just all being done on the blockchain or by computers, so that a human person in the government couldn't just stop your paycheck if he wanted to. Plus, of course, we could put stop gaps in there, and like any government official that was that corrupt and tried to do such a thing would hopefully be punished and go to jail or whatever. So, I mean, these are just concerns that can be brought up, but of course, there's always ways to take care of that if we think about it ahead of time, like we're trying to do right now. So another concern that it brought up is that no one will want, is that we need to have an incentive for people to work. But in this kind of a world, no one will want to clean the sewers or stock shelves or repair power lines unless they're paid a lot. And the fix for that is you'd still need a market or an incentive structure on top of the UBI. And so people could get extra pay for doing those unpleasant jobs, just like they do now. Only in our backwards world, the people that do a lot of that essential work aren't paid nearly as much as they should be. So maybe that's something that would improve in this future world, that they could actually be paid a lot for doing these jobs that nobody wants to do. Or the robots could come along and they could be the ones that do those dirty jobs like that no human wants to do. Another concern is political feasibility. Even if the system is technically possible, it's a political minefield. Implementing UBI would mean massive shifts in tax systems, rethinking the whole welfare and healthcare system and housing system, convincing people that free money isn't a scam. Yeah, some groups, especially the very rich or ideologically conservative, may fight it hard tooth and nail just because it's something new and it's giving power to more people that they would like to keep for themselves. But then it goes on to say, is this system inevitable regardless of what we think of it? Is it something that's just going to happen anyway? Arguably, yes, if AI and automation keep progressing at their current pace, something like this might be the only sustainable way forward. Here's why. Fewer jobs will be available, so because we're lazy, but because machines will outperform us in many of these roles. So we can't let people starve, obviously. So if millions of people or billions of people are out permanently unemployed through no fault of their own, society will have to provide. And this is like the best and most efficient way that they could provide for people, because in a thriving economy, the demand must continue. Economies depend on consumers. And of course, consumers need money in order to consume. So if no one has money, no one will be buying anything. and capitalism would collapse from the demand side, because if there's no money, that's why like money is going to have to be created no matter what, just to keep the economy going.
Another theory that people have posited, or a solution, I guess, would be like all these very wealthy people who ha own all the robots, and like loan them out to other people or whatever. They would have to pay taxes for the use of the robot. So then that could be one way it could be funded too.
Yep, that's been one of the things that this brought up. So they ask what else could work if you don't like UBI, that idea. Um, Other ideas that have been explored or imagined are job guarantees instead of UBI. The government guarantees a job to anybody who wants it, but basically that's just placating people who like can't think out of the box. I mean, there's already plenty of paper pushers in the world and people that don't really have real jobs that are just kind of getting paid to push papers around or whatever. So I don't see the point of creating more jobs like that. And that just creates a whole bunch of other problems. Like then there has to be a boss to make sure those people are coming to work every day. And just whole systems like that, you would think it would just be easier to just send out a check to everybody, even if they don't go to work. So the upside of that, I guess, would be that it maintains work value, the work value model, or like work equals value for people that are dependent on that.
And
If they
like they
think
would
they have
get
the
more
job, they're
money.
going to be worthy. What?
That would be a reason that the ones that did choose to work, would get more money than the ones that just had the basic income.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, there are going to have to be some people that go to work, but I hope we just don't create a bunch of jobs for people that aren't really doing anything just so they can say that they're going to work.
Yeah.
Um, like the downside of that whole system, like I said, is that it's less flexible and more inefficient and doesn't really address the automation uh, whole thing as well, because so many things will be done without humans already. So then another idea that that has been thought of is a resource-based economy, and that's where you have no money at all. You just have shared access to resources managed by technology. And that has been popularized by project like the Venus Project, which I don't really know anything about. I hope it's not just a hallucination of the Chat GPT. But I mentioned that it has been tried somewhere, and like that's just a neat thing about having conversations like this, is it was just throw things out there that you've never heard of before. So that's like a whole nother angle that I could have pursued about what that whole idea is. Um, but they say that that idea is super idealistic and possibly only viable in a post-scarcity world, which hopefully we are headed towards if we learn to manage our resources properly. So another idea is to have local or community currencies in smaller systems built around cooperation, bartering, or localized money. Instead of everything coming from the top government, we could have all of this done more locally. It would be kind of like a backup to big state UBI. And another idea is kind of like what Connie was mentioning, have companies that benefit massively from AI pay into a fund that redistributes to society. Think of it like a carbon tax, but for automation. So it might not be about whether this system or a UBI system can or should happen. It might just be about how gracefully we can make this transition, because it's going to happen anyway. That's the real challenge: culture, politics, and trust, whether we can get all of those things to work together. So it's told me that it said, you're asking some great questions that people need to be asking now, not after the wave hits. Do you got any particular direction you'd want this future to take? Or is this just something you've been chewing on lately? So it like encourages you to just keep having a conversation with it. So I emailed all this to my siblings and I said, so now I might ask it stuff about cryptocurrency or just about some kind of limited currency, because I remembered that that's what my brother had said that he liked about Bitcoin, is that there's a limited supply of that. So it keeps getting more valuable the more people that buy into it. Whereas if the government just keeps creating dollars, the dollars get less valuable. So I was going to ask it about creating other currencies that have a limited supply or limited use, like certain types of currency that we could use for one thing and another kind of limited currency that we could use for something else just to keep inflation in check. But yeah, a lot of smarter minds than mine will be thinking about this stuff with the help of AI. So it's just pretty amazing to think what we might be able to come up with and all the types of future worlds that we can imagine, as long as we can stop putting people in charge who just kind of throw tariffs around willy-nilly or whatever. We're just going to have to be more careful about who we put in leadership and in the highest positions, because those people are going to have even more power thanks to machines and computers, but arguably that also makes the average citizen more powerful too, because we also have access to these chat bots and things that can help us think through these issues. So I went ahead and did that. I had a whole conversation with the Chat GPT about what this possible future world could look like. And then I said to my siblings, well, what do you know? The Chat GPT likes my idea, LOL. I think it's pretty cool and paints a picture of a pretty great world. Amazing the way it even gives suggestions on how to keep the conversation going. And I think I'll be doing this all night, which I've kind of ended up doing that night. Then I was just talking more and more to the Chat GPT about this interesting world we could have in the future. And I think I'll have to actually stop here and make this a 3-part conversation, which I didn't know I would have to when I first started this. But I think this last part is even more interesting, because it kind of took an individual in this new society and like just gave me a picture of how that person would actually live from day to day and how that would work. So that I sent that to my siblings and got their opinions of what they thought of that. But that will have to, I think, wait until next time, which will probably just be a 10 or 15-minute conversation, because there's not too much left of this. But I thought it was really interesting. So that's what I'll share next time.
Cool. These are topics we should all be thinking about. And with that, this meeting is about to end, so we will say goodbye till next time.